Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'd like to thank Land of Medicine Buddha. I'd like to thank Michael for co-hosting with me this evening, for helping. Christina, the spiritual program coordinator, for setting up this program with me, and all of you for joining. I'm delighted to be here. So we are going to take you through a 6-part series, July and August, Tuesday evenings, that will hopefully compose the module 5 of Discovering Buddhism, but really give you a sense of how best to prepare for death, how to be comfortable with this inevitable situation. And I will be talking first about more traditional ways that the Tibetan Buddhist tradition brings in, and then we'll also be discussing more practical applications as a caregiver and other ways to think about it in our culture, and how to take care of people who are passing away, who are not Buddhist, how to manage that for people that are Buddhist, and things like that in general. So hopefully to give you a good overview. I did want to mention that this course can also be done at what's called a certificate level. So what that involves is you'd be doing all the readings that are associated. We'll talk about the materials in a moment. The readings, there are meditations that I'm going to be actually taking you through each session, and then you practice some of those on your own. There's some exercises, things like that. And then there's basically at the end, an online exam you can do, and also assessment questions that I like to check with you, and I'll be going through that with you. And what's nice about the assessment questions is you can understand how to play it back and explain it to someone else as if they don't know anything about this topic. It's a way that you deepen your knowledge and that you can really get a deeper sense of what you've just heard in the course. And that's a way you really learn how to teach. So it doesn't necessarily mean that when you finish the module, you feel ready to teach it, but it does definitely put you into that seat where you realize, I really need to digest this a little more thoroughly. So I think you really get a deeper experience if you're interested like that. And then there's also a retreat component that you and I, whoever wants to do this, will do it together. And we'll have a day or a few sessions over the course of a day. Sometimes we do it as a weekend, depending if we're in person or not, that we'll be doing the meditations and talking a little bit more about what we studied in the class. So when you complete all that, great, then I kind of sign off on the different things that you've done, if you feel comfortable, and you can do that. And then when you go through the different modules, Discovering Buddhism, then when you complete all those modules, technically you can be certified and as a registered teacher with the FPMT of Discovering Buddhism. So I just wanted to explain that if that's a path that any of you might be interested in. Great. Are there any questions about that before we start? Everybody okay? And let me just have a quick look at everybody. Wonderful. Great. Some old friends, some new friends. Anyway, lovely to have all of you here. Again, my name is Amy Miller, and I've used to live in the California area, helping the centers there, and have been a nun for about 21 years, and have also done hospice training extensively in San Francisco during the peak of the AIDS epidemic in the 80s. So really enjoy bringing people through this course to have everyone be more comfortable with this ultimate transition. Excuse me, let me just get my plug that has fallen out. Here we go. So let's please start with a little meditation, just to put ourselves in the right framework, the right mindset, which is the most important part of our lives in general. So just sit comfortably. Find whatever comfortable position for your body. Now, when you're meditating, most of you are very familiar with meditation, I'm sure, but let me give you a few tips, just adjustments if it's helpful. If it's possible, you can sit in a chair. Absolutely, you can meditate in a chair. If it's possible, don't lean too heavily against the back of the seat. And the reason is your back will become strong. And every time you lean against a wall or a pillar or a seat, you create an obstruction in a sense to the flow. So again, please experiment. Please experiment and please check up thoroughly on everything that I'm talking about. Don't just accept. You want to cook it yourself and really see, does this actually apply? Is this how this works? Then it'll deepen your experience and your insights. And you want to find the most important part is to be comfortable. You could be in any cross-legged posture that works for you, or you can be in a chair or a sofa. If you are seated in a chair like that, have your feet straight down if they're not in a cross-legged posture. And if you'd like, put a cushion under your feet if that's more comfortable for the position of your hips. The main thing is to get comfortable with the position. You can lightly close your eyes. With your gaze, focus more towards the tip of your nose or the floor and the space in front. So here's the next component in our meditation practice in general. We like the idea of meditation. What happens is we come in from an activity into our meditation space. We plunk ourselves down on a seat. And we just expect that meditative space to open up. We forget to relax ourselves. So meditation helps us relax. That's not its only purpose, but it does help us relax, unwind. But it helps to also relax to get into the meditation. And when you really disengage your nervous system, the meditation comes organically. So scan from the top of your head right now, all the way down through your body, through your feet and toes. And use your respiration to further and deepen the relaxation. So noting any places you're holding tension. As you inhale deeply, open up space in the tense areas. As you exhale deeply, let that tension release as much as possible. And then let's turn to our motivation for this evening. What's your purpose for being here? Just reflect for a moment. So certainly an interest in death and rebirth according to the Tibetan tradition. Perhaps also with some practical applications. How to support yourself, how to support others, absolutely. And that's all very helpful. And think if we can really understand that we are going to die soon. But rather than it only pulling the mind down into depression and fear, what if we allow it to lift up our practice and motivate us in a refreshing way so that we can really reach that fully awakened state quickly, because so many beings are suffering who need our help. So as a human right now, we're limited in how we can help them. As a Buddha, a fully awakened being, a fully realized being, we're unlimited in how we can help them. So if you'd like to include that Mahayana motivation in your motivation, take a moment right now, setting that positive motivation for our time together and all the activities of the rest of your day. So please relax, and we'll do a short mandala offering, which is traditional for teachings, and this is symbolic. Mandala represents a world system. It's strictly symbolic of reminding ourselves in ancient times, people would come with their most precious jewel to get one line of teaching. And now teachings are everywhere, all over the internet. You can tune into anything. And we kind of forget the idea of generosity, things like that. So it's helpful to support our centers. Our centers have had a really hard time in the pandemic. So the mandala offering, some people put their hands in a certain configuration. You can learn that. Slowly we'll explain if you like. I think there's a course that's being offered. Oh no, that's a different center about ritual, how to do things like this, but certainly in the future we can go over things like that. And it represents the universe. So let's just, and I'm sorry, Michael, do we have the prayers of the short mandala offering? I think I was supposed to come up with that. Let me see if I can quickly find that. I forgot to look for it. I had a very busy day today. Let me, hang on one second.
Yeah, I might have some. I'll look as well. We'll see who gets there first.
Okay, great. I'm sure it won't be me. Okay, I've got one book up, but now I just need to find the mandala offering. Let's see. Sorry about this. Prayers.
I've got one.
Okay.
A short mandala. Here, I'll put it up and just see if it's going to work for you.
Bodhicitta prayer that we do before the teachings. I thought I had it right here, but I'm not finding it right now, but I can find it. Okay. Okay, so you've got the mandala offering. Great.
And I've got bodhicitta.
Wonderful. Perfect. Let's start with the mandala offering. Thank you. Thanks so much. So again, just visualize. We're going to read this in English. Visualize the most extensive universe you can. And not only is it filled with beautiful things, but you can imagine all the love you've ever experienced, beautiful sunsets, the fact that you've connected with Buddhist teachings. And in our tradition, on every atom of that mandala, of that world system you visualize, are infinite more mandalas, more world systems. So with that in mind, let's read this prayer. This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all migrating beings enjoy this pure land. Do you have the rest of that prayer?
No, we just have the short mandala offering in venerability.
Guru Radna Mandala Kam Niratayami. And the refuge and bodhicitta. Okay, so let me explain this briefly. Refuge and bodhicitta. Most of you are familiar with this prayer, and we say it and we blah blah when we say our prayers. You know, we don't really think about the meaning. Our mind is not necessarily present with the meaning. Okay. We'll recite this 3 times, but this contains the entire path. These 4 lines contain the entire path. This is the version we do before the teaching. So you see the underline chunyin, or it says from listening to the Dharma. When you recite it on your own, if any of you do this prayer, some people do it 3 times in the morning, 3 times at night. It's a nice little component, bookends for your day. You would say, by the collection of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha, okay? Giving and other perfections are the 6 perfections, which are part of the bodhicitta teachings, how to wake up your heart, how to develop totality heart, as Lama Yeshe would call it, okay? So just to give you some distinction, but basically we go for refuge, okay, to the 3 jewels, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, which is Supreme Assembly as Sangha. That's your spiritual community. On another level, monks and nuns. So the Buddha jewel, on one level, is Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha that lived 2,600 years ago. Okay, but on an ultimate level, it's the omniscient mind. Omniscient consciousness is what we take refuge in. That sounds pretty good, the all-knowing mind. Think about if you had an all-knowing mind. Would that protect you from more suffering? You bet. Okay. The Dharma are the teachings on one level, conventional Dharma jewel. Ultimate Dharma jewel, the teachings on emptiness. That's the real refuge. That's what really frees you. Teachings on the nature of reality, that things lack inherent nature. And the Supreme Assembly is the relative Sangha jewel, and there's an ultimate Sangha jewel, conventional or ultimate. Conventional Sangha jewel could be your spiritual community like Land of Medicine Buddha, could be monks and nuns. Ultimate Sangha jewel are those who've had a direct perception of emptiness, are then called the Arya Sangha. And so by the collection from listening to the Dharma, from listening to the teaching tonight, can I become a Buddha to benefit all migrating beings? So basically, the reason I take refuge is the lower capable beings motivation of the Lam Rim, that lower scope. Is I take refuge because I don't want to suffer anymore, and I'm terrified that what comes next for me when I die is going to be really much worse. So that out of that fear, I get motivated to practice Dharma. And then build on that as I explore all the various ways you suffer. And I'd really like to bring about an end to my own suffering. That's the middle scope, the medium capable being's motivation is I'd really like to reach nirvana and end my own suffering. That would be great. But then I realized with the Mahayana, the higher scope, the being motivated with that big heart realizes I can't really sleep well at night if I know I'm free of suffering, but all these other beings are suffering. So if I can generate bodhicitta, that good heart, and have the right view of emptiness, which I developed through developing Shine, calm abiding, okay, then I can become a Buddha, the last line. Why? The real purpose is to benefit all. Migrating beings means sentient beings, meaning beings that go around and around, they migrate through samsara. Samsara, Sanskrit term, to turn. A Sanskrit term that means to cycle, and we're cycling through suffering, birth, old age, sickness, death. We migrate through that, turning. Sentient being, not a Buddha consciousness, an ordinary consciousness. Okay, so that the real purpose is to benefit all those beings, not to get enlightened, to benefit all those beings. Getting enlightened is the means to benefit all living beings perfectly. Okay, so thinking about that right now, we're going to chant that, we're going to read this prayer once in the English, and then we'll chant it in the Tibetan twice. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the collections, it actually say by listening to the Dharma, collections I achieve by listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all migrating beings. Sanye chodan soki chonam la janchu bardu da ni gyab suchi dagi chin yingi peso namgi drola pencher sange druparsho sange chodan soki chonam la janchu bardu da ni gyab suchi dagi chin yingi peso namgi drola pencher sange druparsho. Thank you so much. So I want to welcome all of you. Thank you so much for joining. It's lovely to see all of you. I just wanted to check, there's a Preston here. Is that Preston from Hawaii by any chance? Preston, if you want to say. Okay. Anyway, and Michael will be, no, okay, it's a different Preston. Thank you. Michael will also be managing the chat that I tend to not look too much at when I'm teaching. So if you have questions that come up, you can put them in the chat. You can also raise your hand and I will make time for questions and answers. I do know that part of this class may start touching some uncomfortable places in you when we talk about death and rebirth. That's perfectly okay. I mean, it's very, very normal. Some of the meditations we do. So I have led death retreats that can span 10 days or longer. And there is a phase of that where everybody gets depressed in the middle. We also had a retreat at Vajrapani years ago, led by Rebirth Rinpoche. And and he said, when that happens in the middle, it's a very good sign, even though it's uncomfortable. Okay. So a lot of our spiritual practice, and this is certainly a topic that touches this, is getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. Death is one of the most uncomfortable things we face in our lives, whether it's death of a loved one. It could be death of a system that you're enjoying, and certainly death of yourself. Okay. So we're going to look at the passage of impermanence in a way that we can become a little bit more familiar with it. And the things we are more familiar with, we tend to be more comfortable with, like that. So those are some of the things we're going to talk about. And I want to just begin with talking about traditionally in the Tibetan Buddhist system, there's what they bring in are advantages of when we think about death, and disadvantages when we don't think about death. So I want to kind of look at this of why do we want to talk about it? There's people in our culture that feel it's morbid. And I want to also explain to you first, and we will do different death meditations, but the easiest death meditation is something I do every morning while I'm lying in bed, waking up. The easiest death meditation. So I want to ask you, and we may also have breakout sessions at certain sessions. And I like to, it's hard on the screen, but I tend to engage you in questions like that. So sometimes helpful if you want to participate in that. But I want to ask how you wake up in the morning. What are your waking thoughts? Just your waking thoughts. What comes into your mind when you wake up? Anybody, feel free to unmute.
Usually gratitude at not dying during the night.
Okay, gratitude, not dying during the night. Yep, that's a good one.
I'm alive, gotta get going.
I'm alive. Yep, gotta
Gotta
get
get going. Yeah.
Yep, we've got activity happening. I'm alive. This is great. Do you have any negative thoughts when you wake up? Some people have negative thoughts when they wake up. Jessica, a little bit?
Yeah, sometimes I get overwhelmed and think, oh my gosh, I have so much to do today, or I just kind of get caught up in the go, go, go of stuff.
Sure. Like some people wake up with lists, right? Don't you have your agendas? And
Yeah.
don't the agendas sometimes mow you down before you even get out of bed? Isn't it amazing? Right. And I do know people that wake up with a groan, they tell me. They wake up with a groan. You know, their eyes start to open, whether it's an alarm or not, and suddenly they're like, oh. So can you imagine? Because you have a precious human rebirth. You got a good situation. Now, I know we all have problems, and I don't know your individual problems, but we're all like that in samsara, okay? So what I first do, and you can practice this tomorrow morning, you can practice it this week. This is just a practical exercise, okay? Is my first coming into consciousness, either the alarm goes off or I wake up naturally, okay? And I'm waking up, and there is a moment, you know, when you're coming into consciousness where you realize I'm not sleeping anymore, I'm waking up, okay? So we're awake, and not many people I know get out of bed right away. Most people linger a little bit, especially in the winter. People tend to linger in bed longer. It's comfortable, it's warm. You get out, it's cold in the room. Okay, it's very natural. You just want to get familiar with your behavior. If there's something you want to change, the beginning is to become familiar with what you're doing, what isn't working or what might be working. Okay, so I have this moment, okay, I'm waking up, you know, and then shortly after that, I have an awareness that fortunately right now, it will change, but fortunately right now, the mind and body seems to be functioning relatively well. And you get a sense of that right in bed. There's a, you know, you're thinking, and the thinking seems to be going along your normal thinking. And the body, you can feel, you know, I'm not racked in pain and feels like I can move and get out of bed. Okay, great. That's just my first initial couple seconds. And then I'm kind of like, fantastic. I'm like, and I just breathe it in, this appreciation. I have 2 minutes in bed, gratitude. Like what Michael said, really gratitude, but really almost like a 2-minute meditation, inhaling the appreciation like a wave rushing over me, soaking through all the pores of my skin, you know, all the way down into the bone marrow, into a molecular level of my body, and soaking every thought, every activity of my mind. So body and mind for just 2 minutes is drenched really in this deep gratitude of this precious life as much as I can, okay? And I might even include, and if you want, you can add on 2 more minutes, it's a really short time, or include it in the first 2 minutes, right? 2 minutes of now appreciating your good qualities, your good qualities. So this gets people a little uncomfortable, okay? We're very easily focused on everything we do wrong. That's easy to focus on. We've got that down. So you say to people good qualities, and people say, well, I don't have any good qualities. That is not accurate. And I don't even know you, but I already know you've got some good qualities. Why? You showed up for a Buddhist course. You're affiliated with a Buddhist center. You have some interest in working with dying, taking care of yourself, taking care of others. Those are 3 things right there. You have a precious human rebirth, 4 things. You have Buddha nature, 5 things. Goodness, I don't even know you. That's a lot of good stuff. Okay. You're probably a good daughter or son or parent or friend or sibling, or you probably bought somebody flowers once or chocolates or took somebody out for a meal. I'm just rattling stuff off, okay? But you have to, it's time for you now to start appreciating yourself. Please, it's really important on the Buddhist path. It's important on any path of life. For you to feel happier, more peaceful, we have to start really rebalancing, giving equal airtime to the good things we do. And there's other things we do, okay? Because we're human. That means we make mistakes, okay? So please have a little bit of that time. I do it first thing in the morning because people are not focusing on any good qualities of themselves. But as soon as they do something wrong, well, wonderful rumination for the next month. Over and over and over. And then what you do is you've just dug a huge trench of negative thinking about yourself. And that's what a lot of people do. And that's why we're so familiar with it, because we do it all the time. So it's time to shift that if you haven't already. Time to shift it. It takes time. It takes concerted effort to recognize I'm doing it, to be gentle with myself in the process, right? Slowly, I worked with myself for years and years and years. I'm like, oh, I got that recording going again. Oh, there's that recording. There's a recording, you know, and slowly I'd envision myself pushing a different button on the playlist. Slowly, I'm going to choose a different song this time, different things. Slowly, slowly, the recordings still remain there, the negative one, until finally over and over and over and over. That's what practice is about. Over and over. Sometimes doing the same thinking over and over, positive thinking. I eventually got to delete the negative stuff, took it off the device totally, like that. So, but this takes effort, it takes practice. You can do it. You can do it. This is your first 2 to 4 minutes in bed, because people waste that time. They hit the snooze, they do, you know, come on, let's make it useful, okay? Then I think this is the next moment, easiest death meditation. And this is the way I think about it. Now you might say, well, today could be my last day. Okay, the way I think about it is this is my last day, because I've been doing this for years. This is my last day. 6 o'clock tonight, it's over. Okay, well, fortunately for me, it's not over at 6 o'clock tonight. Okay, but I really try to feel that also in my bones. Is it a little scary? Sometimes it's a little shocking. You know, and some people say, well, you're going to set yourself up for dying that day. Okay, I've been doing this for 20 years this way. Haven't died yet. Okay, but I will one day. And it could be one day soon. But the thing is, I've thought about it regularly. So it won't be as much of a shock if suddenly I'm dying quickly, because I've thought about it again and again and again. You know, sure, certainly there'll be some shock, but not as if I've never thought about it. We need to give it some thought right now. So I have my next couple minutes. This is my last day. Okay. Okay. Well, how do I want the day to go then? Well, personally for me, I would like the day to have as much meaning as possible. Okay. And I know what that meaning means for me. And it means about showing up for my mind, with my mind present, understanding my mind as much as I can, and working to change negative patterns in my mind, enhancing the positive qualities of my mind, so I can move along this path to full awakening quickly, become a Buddha. Why? Because I really want to benefit all living beings. That's what gives my life most meaning. And that means for me that throughout the day, I want to try to choose kindness as much as I can towards myself and others, and do as much as I can helping others through the day. That's meaning for me in whatever way I can, small, large, whatever comes up that day. That's what I'm going to be focused on and directed towards. Okay. So you individually have to find what lends great meaning to your life. Okay. Some of you may not be sure what that is. Some of you may be extremely clear what that is. Fantastic. So that's the day, is you have to get started on that process right now. Don't waste any more time. Don't wait anymore. You know, I'll sort out that part of my life once I get the house, once I get the mortgage paid off, once I get the kids to school, once I get the new job, once the pandemic is over. Start right now. What lends great meaning to your life? We're going to talk about that more. Okay. And it's different for different people. So from there, after I've done, like, today's my last day, this is it, and I want to really glean the most meaning of today, and then I set my motivation right from there. So today, this is how I'm going to be directed, and then I get out of bed. And then you go, you do your activities, you brush your teeth, you whatever, have a shower, have your coffee. And the thing is, really take some time for that motivation, and then you can bring that motivation up as much as you want all day long. Okay, but what happens is we set the motivation in the morning, and then we completely forget about it. Okay, now you're working. You might go into a place to work. Many people still working from home. No problem, whether you're working from home, whether you go into a place. But occasionally you are going to come across a difficult person. We all have them in our lives. Okay. So from that space, what happens is suddenly a solidity pops up for you. Something solid out there you're averted from. I don't want that. I don't want that in my space. You see the person coming towards you. Oh no. And the mind goes negative. Your mind. Okay. But this is somebody you had a motivation for in the morning, because the motivation is to benefit. Well, this is my motivation. All living beings. The emphasis is on all. If you've ever heard Lama Zopa Rinpoche talk and teach, and sometimes Rinpoche will sit and say, all sentient beings. We're here to motivate, to get enlightened, to benefit all sentient beings. Okay? So all sentient beings, and I've just left all except this person, my difficult person. I'm not in it for them. Okay? We're in it even more for them. So, and you work with your mind through the day, and you have a problem during the day, a cloud comes across the horizon, you're not happy suddenly, please check your mind. What is suddenly going, what changed? What's going on? And can I quickly maybe just recall my motivation very quickly and say, oh, that's right, I'm here to benefit others, not just about me. I'm just one person. More quickly, sometimes we can catch it. Okay. Sometimes all day we forgot all about it. That's really normal. Then that's why we might have another component of meditation at the end of the day. Some sitting practice, some reflection. Really, really helpful. Okay. So that easiest death meditation again. Today's my last day. You could try that all the mornings of our different sessions together for the next 6 weeks or 7 weeks. I think the course spans like that. Okay. You don't have to stop doing it, actually. See, but again, try it on, try the exercises, and then you experiment. Does this work? Does it not work? Is it a waste of my time? You have to experiment. Okay. I just give some ideas. I just give some suggestions.
Really quick, Venerable Amy, this is Christina.
Yes.
I just wanted to pause really quick. You don't mind that I record this session, do you?
No, I think it's being recorded.
Okay, good. All right, perfect. Thank you.
But that started in the beginning.
Yeah, it did. I just wanted to make sure you were okay with it because we hadn't discussed it.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Thank
Yep.
you.
Okay. So again, this course introduces an importance, making awareness of death, and also the transient nature that of all events is an integral part of our lives, as you know, okay? So death is unavoidable, can happen at any time. We're going to explore that. And as a result of that, what's best now is also to keep our relationships clean, clear, as much as possible. Really, really helpful. So think about that. And we're going to talk more about that. How do I clean up messy relationships? A deep understanding of death and impermanence really serves as a basis, I find, for leading a most meaningful life. I'm sure many of you find that as well. People push death away. I don't want to talk about it. And then they end up quite freaked out at the end of their lives. Okay. That doesn't have to be the case for you at all. So we'll look at, why in our society is it an uncomfortable thing to talk about? And at least, thank you to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross that I'm familiar with in the 60s was the first person that wrote the book on death and dying. So in the 60s, she came out with a book that really started the conversation that it was okay to talk about death. I remember an instance, I'm dating myself a little bit, but I was a teenager. We went to visit an aunt of mine dying of liver cancer with my mother, my siblings, and we clearly went to say goodbye to her, and that's how I was instructed. I was like 13 years old, and it was like, we're going to say goodbye to her. She's dying, and this is the last time we'll see her. My mom was really clear. And then my mother said that her daughter, grown daughter, had decided not to tell her mother, that she was dying. They didn't discuss it. The daughter was in with the doctor's appointments, and the doctor told the daughter her mother had cancer and was dying. There was nothing they could do. The daughter chose not to tell her mother. This is what they did in those days. And so my mother said, but don't say anything to her about death. This is somebody who's actively dying. She was still conscious and could talk to us. And so we kind of visited her for a while. We went to the house and we hung out there for a while and sat with her around her bed. And it was kind of surreal because we couldn't really talk about the elephant in the room. I didn't know if she wanted to talk about the elephant in the room. I didn't really have many skills at that time to talk about it, but it just felt kind of funny, like a fantasy. And then we left and it just felt so absurd that we're not going to talk about it. But that was a lot of how our society, and a lot still of our society, feels about this uncomfortable, which makes it more uncomfortable, I think, like that. So why does our culture feel that way? How can we look at death in a healthier perspective that can make it lend more comfort for ourselves? So are these other attitudes very helpful like that? And so what we can look at is, wouldn't it be better to take a more realistic approach? And so that's what we're going to kind of look at, is how to, through generating knowledge, experience of what to expect at the death time, how to prepare ourselves for death. Death becomes, in a sense, an adventure, okay, that we can actually look forward to, as well as a motivator that can help us not only enrich our lives now, but enrich our practices. So you might say, look forward to death. So great meditators look for that opportunity when they're less encumbered by the physical needs of the body and can work with more of their subtle body and mind. And it's very significant to do some of these deeper meditations that they're trained to do. And what we do is we do those meditations regularly in life so that you're familiar at the death time. So we're going to do some of the visualizations that appear to your subtle consciousness when you're actively dying, but they're also visualizations, inner experiences that can happen for you in life right now through higher level practices. So we're also going to do those meditations. So we're going to talk about just a few of the topics to cover. Obviously, Buddhist view of death. I want to talk about gross and subtle impermanence, advantages to think about death, disadvantages of not when you don't reflect on it. We will go through the 9-point death meditation and meditate on it, which is a more traditional, longer death meditation, as opposed to the one I just mentioned. What to expect at the time of death. So I'll talk about the 8 stages of these inner visions, and we'll do a meditation on that. Reincarnation, we're going to talk about other realms of existence, how to make life most meaningful in preparation for death, practices to do at the death time, and how to help others when they're dying. So we're going to talk about things like that. So first I want to talk about impermanence. Gross and subtle impermanence. We'll do a short meditation on impermanence. So we know everything changes. I think you're intellectually aware of that. Everything changes. Okay. But I'd like to ask you, how do you do with change in general? Pretty good? Pretty fluid? Okay, I've got some nods. So you've got plans with a friend that's coming up, and at the last minute, I've got a thumbs up, great. At the last minute, they call you and they can't make lunch. They change the plans, they cancel. You okay with that? Okay, most people okay. And then they do it again, it happens again. You make other plans and they do it again. You were, some people shaking their head. You were about to take an apartment. You were about to sign on the apartment, or you were about to sell your house. There was a contract. You were about to take a position, and then they call you at the last minute. It's not going to work out. your body's changing. Your body's aging. Are you okay with that? Okay. Somebody who was good with other changes, suddenly Colleen, not good with that. Okay. Okay. So this is the thing, is change is really the only thing you can count on. Change is really the only constant that we know. And it's interesting, our suffering, some of our suffering comes from resisting change. There's the pain right there. Change isn't the problem, it's our resistance to it, as you know. Okay. So first, let's explore. We've got basic changes. Look, first of all, look at our body and mind. First of all, the mind's changing every moment. We're aware of that. Okay. The body, sometimes we're not as aware of the changes. And you look back at your hair over 10 years, and now you have all these gray and white hairs. Now your skin has changed. There's more wrinkles on your face. There seems to be more weight around your stomach area. That wasn't there before. There's a pain in your right foot. Your knee creaks. But 10 years ago, it was different. 20 years ago, really different. What's it going to be like 10 years from now? Right? So what happens is we notice with our body, there's subtle changes happening every moment that we're not really watching and not aware of at all. But if you go back 10 years, you go, oh my God, you look at a picture of yourself. You know, I'm living in an area where I've gotten together with some high school friends. And there's a few of them, when I first saw them, I barely recognized them. You know, it's really staggering how people have changed and things. So these things, so first we've got a gross level of change. You eat a meal and you feel a rumbling in your stomach. Okay. You know, I've even got, you see me breathe like you know, the respiration, the basic respiration like that. But then there's a subtle level going on. And the same thing, this kind of gross and subtle impermanence. You can go out into nature as well. So I'm living in an area that has more extreme seasons than those of you in California. Now we're not all, I know not all of you are in California, but the center hosting this is in California. I'm in the Philadelphia area on the East Coast right now, is where I'm based, where I grew up. And so we have 4 seasons, 4 very distinct seasons. And we're in the middle of summer, but by the end of September, the leaves on the trees are changing. By October, it's a beautiful season here. And you see, and the weather starts changing and the temperature drops. And then suddenly, you know, in the middle of December, January, there could be snow. It's very, very cold. You know, so you see that very gross changes happening. But I don't notice in the summer from one week to another that the leaves, slight changes in the leaves, or the development of the birds, or the subtle changes are going on all the time, less noticeable. So let's do a meditation on impermanence. And this is one of the meditations for the course. And Michael, do you have the link for the materials for the course? I just want to talk about those for a moment. He's going to put those in the chat.
I do. Would you like me to put it in the chat right now?
Sure.
Okay.
So I just want to point you to wonderful materials for this course. And basically there are readings I will suggest each week of which readings to do for what I'm talking about, and just to keep up if you'd like. It's up to you whether you want to participate at this level or not. I really recommend. Thank you, Michael. So there's the death and rebirth. I'm just going to have a quick look to make sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure there isn't a newer version.
Okay, so what you're going to find in this. Okay, so this is just the course. So what I also need are, and let me see if they're in the back. Yeah, the 8 stages of dying, but there's also readings and meditations that are separate from this. These are the courses.
Okay.
So,
I'll get Christina to get it.
Yeah, they don't really need the courses, but they need the readings and meditations in particular.
Okay, is this something that would be on the FPMT website? Because I looked on there and I couldn't find that, but then I looked in the drive and this is what I found was these materials. They weren't named this, I renamed them Death and Rebirth.
Sure.
Okay, I find them.
This I would take off. The sample courses is not necessarily But I mean, if you want, you can leave it on, but that's,
Oh, no, sorry, that's the wrong one. There's an email that was sent out that that was the reading materials, Michael. It's in the actual email. It sent it out to everybody. It's probably the most recent Gmail.
great. Now, great. And normally what happens is when we set up Discovering Buddhism, and sorry, just bear with us. We're just, it's our first pass through tonight with each other, is when we set up Discovering Buddhism, we set it up that there's a enrollment key that each center gets, and the centers participate by buying the courses. And so your registration fees, if you give any, help to support that. And that helps to support our FPMT education department that provides these courses. So what happens is they give you then can get the enrollment key. And when you go in the enrollment key and put it on the FPMT site for this Discovering Buddhism module, which the center can give you the link, all the materials are there. Everything's there, suggested readings and all the readings and meditations and exercises, assessment questions, everything like that. So you have all the materials all at once. So I don't know if that's something, but we can talk about that later, Christina, not to worry.
Okay, I think that was my bad, Michael. I will try and find the materials in the Google Drive and see exactly what it is.
Not to worry, but what I'm going to do right now is I want to give you guys for next week, because I want you to do the meditation. I'm going to give you my Impermanence Meditation, if I can copy it in here. Just bear with me a second. Okay. I know I can do this. Okay, let's see. Okay. Okay, there's the Impermanence Meditation. And the next one I want to do is give you the readings.
Amy, I did get my hands on that's 120 pages long. Is that the correct one?
Oh, you have the readings? That's great. That's
Yep.
probably,
I'll post that in the chat. Okay,
Great.
sorry about that.
that's okay. Not to worry at all.
Yeah, I got it in my email. It was mailed to me today.
I'm just gonna have a quick look when you post it because I want to make sure I'm corresponding to the right sections. If you don't have it, I can put it up.
I've got it. Just a second. I just have to save it real quick. And if you have it, I'm having a little bit of a problem with my computer right now.
That's the right one, Michael. Thank you.
Okay, hang on. I'm just getting it up right now.
Oh, I see it in the chat there.
I think I accidentally just sent it to you because we've been chatting, so I meant to send it to everybody.
Okay, I think this is it. The Death and Rebirth readings. This is updated. Okay, so if right now I'm going to share my screen for a moment. And let me just hang on one second. Okay, let me share my screen and show you everyone. Okay. Can you see the contents there? Let me know if you can't see it. What I'd love, if you'd like to for next week, okay, is read the first three, Death, Intermediate State, and Rebirth by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Again, it's not very long. It's a few pages. Remembering Death by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and Dissolution, which is a lovely prayer, a lovely meditation I may lead you through next week, by Lama Yeshe. So if you can just start with those three and just see if you can get through those, or at least start with those, that would be really helpful. Okay? And those are in the chat. So I think if you want to, each of you take it and then you save it, something like that, and then you've got it if you want to read it. So you got the meditation on impermanence, which we're going to do right now. Now I do sometimes variations. So you can either follow along the page, which is fine. And what you do, and here's the thing for those of you that may be a little bit newer, is there's no magic to meditation. It's simply you being with your mind as best as you can, being still and being with your mind. What you do is have the meditation in front of you. If you want to use a device and your computer's in front of you, you're sitting there, that's fine. You have a tablet, your phone, it doesn't matter. You know, I tend to like to have a piece of paper where I'm not in front of the device, but sometimes I don't use paper as much anymore. That's fine. So what you do is read the thing, and then you'll get to the main basis because it talks about motivation first, your position, posture. And then what you want to do is get to the main body of the meditation, and all the meditations are designed like that, pretty similarly. You read a sentence or two, just pause and really take your eyes off the screen, and go in and analytically think about what you just read, and really go in there for a few minutes to kind of cook it, sift through it, let it dissolve slowly, let it sink further, and use experiences from your own life to analyze, to think about. And this is what we'll do right now. And then what you do is you read another couple sentences. Go on through that, read another couple sentences slowly. And eventually these meditations are meant to be done over and over. It's not just about doing them one time. If you do them over and over, you don't need the page anymore. You know the meditation, and you can really absorb your mind into it, okay? And when you have an aha moment in the meditation where suddenly you realize everything changes. Everything's changing, my body, mind, the external reality, everything changes. Even though the wall seems solid, it's not solid at all. So slowly through that process, okay, I then want to plant my concentration on that juicier, deeper feeling that everything changes. Keep your concentration there as long as you can. That feeling will fade. That feeling will fade again, okay? And then you go back and analyze again more quickly. And that's how we combine Shine, or calm abiding meditation, with analytical meditation. That's the real point. The analytical meditation, when you have a deep insight into it, by applying your concentration, your Shine, that's what starts changing your life, changing your mind for the better. Okay, let's sit. Let's do this meditation on impermanence. Okay, Catherine can't download the updated version. Maybe you can help her, Michael, with that. So just sitting comfortably and finding that posture again, comfortable posture. Lightly close your eyes. And one thing I wanted to mention, the reason I started talking to you about your meditation posture, many of you are wonderful meditators, I have no doubt, okay? What happens is you want to get into good habits right now. It's really important to get into good habits. And we start getting a little lazy and we find this posture and this is what we do. And as a result, you know, when you do try to sit up, your back will hurt, but it doesn't have to hurt if you're constructing that posture. So when I started meditating, learning to meditate, I was much younger and I could barely sit for like 5 to 8 minutes. My knees were really in pain, okay? So just from doing it over and over in a cross-legged posture again and again and again, my body's adapted, and my knees are worse than they were, but my I don't have pain anymore. My body's used to, it's familiar. This is about familiarity. That's what meditation really, the word gom, meditation, means in Tibetan is familiarize. Familiarize your mind with what? Virtuous mind states. That makes us happy. Okay. So please lightly close your eyes. Check your posture for a moment. And bring your awareness to your breath. So I'd like you to notice now the gross changes going on in your body right now. I don't mean gross, disgusting. I mean gross that you can track. For instance, you might have an itch on your body. You might notice you're sweating. You might feel gurgling in your stomach or swallow. So just notice right now any changes you can note in your body. Blatant changes you're aware of in your body. But let's imagine now on a more subtle level, the changes taking place in your body right now. There is blood coursing through your circulatory system. You may not even be aware of that. Or your heart beating. The lungs are doing their activity. Could be digestive activity. Think about your cells, the cells in your body, developing, passing away. And go all the way down, imagine, to a molecular level. All the tiny parts of cells moving around in a certain configuration. And just get a sense right now of all of those changes going on in your body. How's your mind? What about your mind? All the thoughts, feelings, ideas you have right now, one streaming after another after another. To get a sense of the changing nature of your mind. And just really feeling that flux with body and mind. It's always changing. That's its nature. And just moving out a bit beyond the border of your body and mind to the room around you where you're sitting. So the seat or the floor or the chair may feel firm, so have some solidity to it. The walls of the room, certainly. Other furniture in the room, other items. But we know there's a molecular structure to those items. So the molecules moving around in the walls moves more slowly. They move more slowly than the molecules in the air you breathe. But there's also constant motion there. That's just not how it appears to us. So just explore right now the changing nature in the room in which you sit. And let's move out beyond the room or the apartment or the house that we're sitting in and go outside beyond. There may be cars or buses driving by, trees growing, leaves shifting a little bit in the air. Could be animals out there moving around. The earth changing, the sun moving in the sky, the moon moving in the sky, the earth turning. Think about that external reality and all of the changes going on. Constant change happening. And even if you look at a street that can support a vehicle, it seems really solid. If you're living in California and there's earthquakes, the street becomes like the ocean during an earthquake. Can. No solidity there at all. It takes a certain form due to the nature of asphalt, for instance, but that's also made up of minute particles moving in a certain configuration. Please reflect on that whole changing nature of that external reality. So body and mind, your body and mind, and the external reality is in this nature of changing. Anytime you feel you get a sense, everything changes. Place your concentration on that experience to deepen it. If it fades, then more quickly analyze again the nature of your body and mind. The nature of the external reality is change. Find that juicy taste again and place your concentration there as much as you can. So in realizing, having some insight that everything changes, we intellectually understand that, but through these meditations, it helps to move that understanding in your head to a level in your heart where you have a spiritual realization of it, where you really know. And then we can less resist when change occurs, when changes are happening. So please relax. Just notice as you open your eyes, any little bubbles of thoughts coming up from the meditation. Any questions so far related to anything we've been talking about or the meditation? I think everybody seems to be doing pretty good. Great. I want to talk about the disadvantages if you never think about death, and the advantages of why is it good and why is it not a morbid thing to do. So there's 6 of each, and some of these you know quite well, but disadvantages of not remembering death. And really, it's helpful to recall everyday death, to realize, again, this could be my last day, this is my last day. Let it wake you up a little bit and motivate your practice. So what happens is if you don't think about it, you won't remember the Dharma. Think about your own life, right? How much Dharma am I really practicing every day, okay? Number 2, even if I remember the Dharma, I postpone my practice. Some people feel like later, I've got time, later I'll do it. You know, when I get this sorted, when I get that sorted. Number 3, you try to practice, but your practice isn't very pure. Number 4, you'll lose your determination to practice and eventually drop it altogether if you don't recall death. Number 5, there's great potential for you to continue to create negative actions that can really impede your path to liberation. And 6 is maybe the worst, is that you can die with great regret. So that you'll have great regret at wasting this precious opportunity that you had. So again, you don't remember the Dharma. You may remember it, but postpone practice. You may try to practice, but the practice is not going to be going that well. You may eventually just lose the determination and give up the practice, create negative activities, and die with a lot of regret. What happens if you think about death? Advantages to thinking about death, okay? Your Dharma practice becomes very pure, number 1. Your Dharma actions become powerful and effective. And 3, 4, and 5, somewhat related, they say thinking about death is beneficial in the beginning, in the middle, and in the end. So that relates, number 1, to the beginning of your Dharma practice, the middle of your Dharma practice, and the end of your Dharma practice. But I would also equate that to the beginning of your life, the middle of your life, and the end of your life. So if you think about death, the initial parts of your Dharma practice are invigorated and you really throw yourself into it. And that's like a lot of new students. They found this jewel and they're really excited and off you go. Okay. The middle of your practice is where you reach a plateau sometimes and the practice gets a bit dry and boring. And you want something exciting, but you kind of lost the luster. And then you remember, I'm going to die soon. So that kind of wakes you up and reinvigorates your practice. At the end of your practice is usually corresponding to the end of your life. So that's what's going to be there for you. That's what's going to help you tremendously. And if you really want to think about, is it beneficial to think about death in the beginning of my life? Well, certainly, I think it's helpful to keep things in perspective. And in the middle of your life, let's say, you know, thinking what happens in the middle of life, we're building a career. We might be acquiring real estate or a house, saving money, raising children, all these things. And you can, again, have a healthy perspective about it. You know, I've been cleaning out my parents' house. They've had the house, we've had this house for 65 years. Can you imagine? And this is an East Coast house. So that means there's a big attic and a big basement and a crawl space and a garage. This is not a big house, not a big house at all. But those spaces are sizable for storage, unfortunately. And as my brother says, you spend 40 years collecting things to spend 20 years sifting through and throwing them away. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? So fortunately for me, even though I've had to clean out a couple centers that I was running, and I got there, but for my own life, because I'm a nun, but even as a Dharma practitioner, long before I was a nun, I was living in simple places, and I just knew that none of these places were going to be permanent. I just never felt, I was never attracted to owning a home, and so as a result, I had to live lightly because I didn't want to move stuff, and I was like, well, what am I going to do if I buy a sofa? Then what? How am I going to move it there? Why spend the money? So I always lived simply, and it just kept things a lot easier and a lot less attachment, living simply. So you can think about that in the middle of your life. Is it worth acquiring all this stuff? And it's amazing how several friends of mine, they bought the house, they had a house built. Many people I know. And you know what it's like when, we built a couple of cabins when I was running Milarepa Center in Vermont. Two little cabins. And still the decisions I had to make about the knobs on the bureau and what kind of cabinets and what kind of flooring and the color of this for me, it was like a lot in one room cabin. So imagine with the house, and you do all this stuff, you spend all this time comparing tile and the bathroom this and the towels, and you want it to match like that, and endless time people spend. And then now my friends have moved to another house. So that happens all the time for people. So again, it's okay. It's not like there's anything right or wrong about it. It's just how much time do you want to devote to things like that when you could be working with your mind? So it's really helpful when you think about death. And I do find simplicity in life can be really advantageous for happiness. But please check your own scene and your own thing. There's nothing wrong, certainly, with having some relatively comfortable place from which to base yourself and live. And I've definitely found the value of that, being based in my parents' house for a while like that. So, and then the advantages so that was 3, 4, and 5. And then number 6 is, again, with death, once you think about death and you're regularly thinking about it every day, you tend to not die with regrets because you've used your life wisely. Used your life wisely. Okay, one last thing before we end tonight I want to talk about. Great. Is something called the 8 worldly dharmas. The 8 worldly dharmas. And so basically, why it's beneficial in the middle of your Dharma practice, why it's beneficial in the middle, and why it's beneficial in the end of your Dharma practice is to avoid the thought of the 8 worldly dharmas. For you to avoid the thought of the 8 mundane concerns is another word for them. 8 worldly dharmas are 8 mundane concerns. What are those about? Why is this important? Let's look at these. These are situations that manipulate you through just about everything in your life. Let's be real, okay? And some of you are familiar with these. Who knows what the 8 worldly dharmas are? Just raise your hand. Okay. Jane, you want to roll? What are the first? So these are 4 pairs of situations. 4 pairs of situations. Can you give me the first pair?
Let's start with loss and gain.
Okay, that's not the first one. I'm going to start with another one first.
Which one is first? Pleasure and pain?
Pain and pleasure. Thank you. Pain and pleasure. Thank you, Jane. So pain and pleasure, and it's lovely to see you as well. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time, Venerable, and so good to see you. Thank you.
Great to see you. Okay, pain and pleasure. Okay, so the technical in Tibetan is being happy when you feel pleasure, when you feel good. And I think I would say happy with pleasure, the 6 senses, okay? And being unhappy when you feel pain, when you feel discomfort. It might even go to the level of, and I'm going to use this word, craving. Okay, craving for pleasure of the six senses, that's pleasure. Craving to be free of the unpleasant, pain. Okay, then we're going to go to the second pair. Jane said gain and loss, I think you mentioned, right? Gain and loss. So this is craving to acquire material things, gain, okay? And then craving to avoid losing or not obtaining material things, that's loss, when you don't get something. Then we've got the next pair. Craving, and it basically they'll say being happy or craving to hear sweet, ego-pleasing words or sounds. That's another word for that is praise. And craving to not hear ugly, displeasing words or sounds. Blame. Praise and blame. So I'm just giving you kind of how the literal Tibetan is translated for praise and blame. So and I really like how they use the word craving first. Craving creates a setup for us to suffer. Desire, wanting, grasping. As soon as that turns on in your mind, you're suffering. As soon as that gets activated, and the other thing it activates, it causes another moment of craving in your mind. Implants another moment of craving in your mind, another moment of grasping, another need in your mind, another wanting in your mind, another desire in your mind. And look at all the desires we have, all the things we want. Okay, so that's praise and blame. And to go to a little heavier notion of praise and blame, we have craving for personal praise and admiration. And am I on the right? Yeah. And craving to avoid personal slander, blame, and criticism. So even though it uses the word blame and praise, it's not as heavy as just hearing nice sounds about you, that kind of praise. And basically we call this one fame and dishonor. Fame and dishonor. So you've got pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, and fame and dishonor. And fame and dishonor, I might even say, having a good reputation and having a bad reputation. Okay. So here's another little piece of homework for you for this week. And if you already know the answer to this, if you've heard me teach this before, please don't say when I ask you next week. Of those 8 pairs, okay, pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, and fame and dishonor, having a good reputation, having a bad reputation, which one is the worst? What I mean by that is which one manipulates your mind the most? Which one keeps you up at night? See if you can determine, and this is really what was taught to me by Geshe Lundrup Zopa. Geshe Lundrup Zopa, one of Lama Zopa Rinpoche's teachers. Geshe Zopa was a professor at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and he taught there for about 40 years and founded Deer Park Center in that area. And he's got brilliant commentaries in English on the Lamrim Chenmo, the great treatise of the Lamrim. One of my teachers, wonderful, he passed away some years ago and he was just a beautiful being. And you can also read an autobiography of his life that he wrote, that's a beautiful story. So he had mentioned, he said, one of these is the worst. See if you can determine. And so what you want to notice is how these 8 situations manipulate you. You know, we're always grasping for sense pleasures. That's pleasure. We're always want to feel good. Some people more than others, but we want that chocolate. We want that chocolate, okay? When we don't get it, we suffer. But then we have pain, and we have psychic pain, emotional pain, physical pain. It's nasty, there's no question. And so look how any type of discomfort, from the small to the large, looms in your life, and what kind of somersaults you end up going through mentally to avoid pain, to avoid even discomfort on the slightest little level, some people. But then great pain, what do? How does it manipulate you, okay? And we do know people in great pain who never complain. You don't really know how much pain they're in. So think about, is this manipulating you? Gain and loss, goodness, some people really get tweaked by that. They want the job. They want to have the car that their neighbor has. They wanted the beach house. They want to do that holiday. They want to travel. They want to be, you know, we all have these things. They want to get the gift that somebody gave someone else. Remember when we were little kids? God forbid you should buy a little kid, especially a boy, clothing as a present. I remember my nephew opening a box from my mother, and it was clothing, and he had a complete meltdown right there because he got clothing for, you know, for his birthday, like that. So we have an idea of what we want to gain, and then we lose things. We lose things. We don't get stuff. We didn't get the things that we wanted, and we get really upset. How does that manipulate you? Okay. Praise and blame, and fame and dishonor, somewhat similar. One obviously a little stronger than the others. But, you know, somebody says something nice about you, I'm on top of the world, right? How fantastic. And one way to receive a compliment, because it's nice to, it's one thing to just, in a balanced way, we also need to receive genuine compliments. Absolutely, nothing wrong with that. You can say thank you, but I don't let it get, you know, I try not to let it carry me away the rest of the day. Everything's great. I have nothing to improve, like that. Some people, it's just big ego trip, you know, and then you get blamed. Or even, you know, you have a bad reputation from something you didn't do. Think about, how does that work in your mind? Whether you did it or you didn't do it. Nobody likes being blamed for stuff. Yeah. So you can look at these 8 worldly dharmas. And here's the thing, this is the problem with them. Let's look at what they do, okay? Well, they cause, life is always full of ups and downs, okay? This is the disadvantages, you know? You're on a roller coaster constantly with the 8 worldly dharmas. I got this is wonderful. Somebody said something nice, now they don't like me. Now they want me to do, I mean, continual, okay? You tend to take a lower rebirth if you're just immersed in these 8 worldly dharmas, because your mind's just never, it's like an animal. Animals just go this gratification quickly. They need it or they're running from something. The other thing you're creating is future lives can be spent with uncontrolled attachments. So think about that. What are the imprints I'm making? What are the imprints? And I know people with, you know, one time I was conducting I do some addiction courses as well. I did one at Milarepa Center years ago. There's a big, you know, that part of Vermont and northern countries like that have serious substance abuse problems. The winters are long, people are locked inside. It's, and there was just a lot of addiction in that area in Vermont. Heavy. And so I did this addiction workshop for people. But people are addicted to all kinds of things. A woman came with a shopping addiction. It's not just substances that we're addicted to. She had a shopping addiction. Nearly ruined her entire family. Her husband nearly left her. And I mean, it was a super online shopping she was doing and nearly destroyed her family as a result. So we think about these uncontrolled attachments, what you're setting up for future lives. You don't enter a Mahayana path. You're not that focused on helping others. Hard to reach liberation. You constantly experience hindrances in your meditation. And you're just a slave to the 8 worldly dharmas is what you become. You're just a slave to the 8 worldly dharmas. You get angry because you don't get stuff and things are happening, and that destroys your merits. Destroys your merits. So we're going to talk next week about antidotes and things like that. Are there any final questions, any confusion or anything? So we've got some homework of the 8 worldly dharmas. You know, which one is the worst? Also waking up. How are you waking up? Would you like to reorient yourself with a couple minutes of appreciation and gratitude? Couple minutes of appreciating your good qualities? Then this is your last day, and then set a motivation. You could try that wake up. We've got an impermanence meditation if you want to do that this week. Try to do it more than once if you can. Slowly, take some time. And then there's some readings, okay? Everybody okay? For whatever you can do, it would be great. The more you do, probably the more you get out of it, like that. Any other questions before we part? Yes, we can certainly talk, Christina. So I'd like to dedicate right now. I'm going to share my screen. And these, I'm going to focus right now on some dedication prayers that Lama Zopa Rinpoche suggested we do during this COVID period that I usually use. I lead one of those Saturday morning sessions for of the monks and nuns that are leading some of the COVID practices. My slot's a little too early in the morning for people from California, but I'm going to do some of these dedications and I'll share my screen. You can join with me. And I'd like to dedicate whatever positive energy we've created right now. First off, I would like to invest it in our really waking up about our deaths, but more waking up to the meaning in our life and letting it motivate consistent rich practices for us that is going to benefit us, get us to enlightenment quickly, so we can really be of the most benefit to all living beings. I'd like to dedicate to all the beings with COVID right now to be healed, for the pandemic to stop spreading, for the Delta variant to be eliminated, all the other variants, and for us to get through this pandemic, and for all other diseases and things to be minimized on the planet, as well as war and racism and all other kind of totalitarian regimes. And please feel free to join me. Janju Senjo Rinpoche Mage Panam Ge Gyurchik Ke Panyam Pame Bayi Gone Gondu Belwar Sho. However many sick sentient beings there are, may they quickly be freed from all sicknesses. May all the sicknesses without exception of transmigratory beings never occur again. In all my lives never separated from perfect gurus, may I enjoy the magnificent Dharma. By completing the qualities of the grounds and paths, may I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. I'd like to do this meditation, Rinpoche says, is one of the most important, with emptiness. Due to all the past, present, and future merits collected by me, the numberless Buddhas, the numberless sentient beings, which are completely empty of existing from their own side, may I, who am completely empty of existing from my own side, achieve the state of full enlightenment, which is completely empty of existing from its own side, and lead all sentient beings who are completely empty of existing from their own side to that state which is completely empty of existing from its own side, by myself alone, whom completely empty of existing from my own side. Any understanding you have of emptiness, please reflect for a moment. I fully dedicate all these virtues to be able to train just like the hero Manjushri, who knows reality, and just like Samantabhadra as well. And for the long lives of our precious teachers, for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. For Lama Zopa Rinpoche, you who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the three sublime ones, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Thank you so much. Thank you to Land of Medicine Buddha. Thank you to all of you for showing up, and look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you so much, Venerable.
Thank you.
Is that Jessica?
Thank you, Venerable Amy.
Is that Jessica, the director? Hello.
No, it's a different Jessica, but it's Jessica.
You look a little similar to me.
Thank
And
you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable. Thank you so much.
Well.
So wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable.